What if I told you that the most dangerous thing about being rescued isn't the waiting, it's the discovery that you don't want to be found? What if 4 months of fighting to survive had secretly taught you something that civilization never could? That you're capable of building a life with nothing but your own hands, your own mind, and your own will. You've mastered the basics: water, shelter, fire, food. You've survived storms that should have killed you and learned skills that took our ancestors generations to develop. But today, you're about to cross to the other side of your island prison for the first time. You're about to discover that you weren't the first person to call this place home. The mysterious M, whose bottle map led you to fresh water, whose careful handwriting guided you through your darkest moments, whose tools scattered across the beach spoke of years, not months, of island residence. Today you're going to find out what happened to him. Today you're going to discover what he built in the shadows of the island you thought you knew. What happens when you realize that survival was just the beginning? What happens when you inherit not just tools and shelter, but a decade of someone else's dreams, failures, and ultimate surrender to island life? And what happens when you're forced to choose between his path and your own? Close your eyes and feel that expedition pack on your shoulders. Today, you're not just exploring the other side of the island, you're exploring the other side of what it means to be stranded. "4 months have passed since you washed ashore, and the desperate castaway who once rationed half bottles of water has evolved into someone who thinks in seasons and projects. Your hands are permanently stained with smoke and soil, calloused from rope work and wood splitting. The mirror-smooth pools near your well camp reflect a face that's leaner, more weathered, with eyes that automatically scan for weather changes and resource opportunities. Your daily routines have become natural as breathing. Morning water collection from the well, where you built a proper stone basin that catches overflow for washing. Afternoon maintenance of your 3 camps. The beach station for signaling and marine harvests, the inland well camp for secure sleeping, and the eastern cove where you've been stockpiling materials for the boat project. But today marks something different. For weeks, you've been studying the bottle map and planning what M, the previous resident whose handwriting guided you to the well, called the crossing in his journal Fragments. It's time for your first systematic exploration of the island's far side, the mysterious southern and western sections that remain unknown despite 4 months of residence. The expedition pack sits ready beside your morning fire. 3 days of smoked fish and dried fruit, both water containers filled and purified. The folding knife now supplemented by a basic machete you fashioned from salvaged metal. Fire-starting materials, and most crucially, the bottle map wrapped in waterproof canvas. You've also prepared insurance, trail markers, backup tools, and emergency shelter materials that could keep you alive if something goes wrong. The southern route, according to M's map, leads through the island's most challenging terrain before emerging onto what he marked as the other beach. His notations suggest this side offers different resources, possibly better materials for serious construction projects. But his map also shows symbols you haven't deciphered, small marks that could indicate dangers, discoveries, or landmarks that seemed important to someone who spent years exploring every inch of this place. You've been putting off this expedition partly because your established camps provide comfortable survival. Why risk getting lost or injured when you have reliable water, adequate food, and weather-resistant shelter? But the question that's been growing stronger each week demands an answer. If you're going to build something capable of reaching civilization, you need to understand what this island can really provide. The morning light reveals familiar landmarks: your signal fire ring, the jungle path worn smooth by daily use, the eastern headland where you've watched countless sunrises. Today, instead of following known trails to known destinations, you'll push into unmapped territory, guided only by a hand-drawn chart and the wisdom of someone who died here before you arrived. The southern trail begins where your established paths end, at a clearing you've used as a landmark but never explored beyond. M's map shows the route as ridgelines and valleys leading to the island's opposite shore, but his notations indicate this isn't a casual hike. Several symbols suggest challenging terrain, and one section is marked with what looks like a warning: 3 parallel lines that could mean steep cliffs or dense thickets. You start climbing with confidence, born from 4 months of jungle navigation, but within an hour, the terrain proves more demanding than anything you've encountered. The ridgeline forces you to scramble over moss-covered rocks, where a slip could mean serious injury miles from your camps. The jungle here is older and wilder, with massive trees blocking sunlight and creating a cathedral-like atmosphere that's both beautiful and unsettling. Your machete gets a workout, pushing through sections where undergrowth has reclaimed whatever path M once used. Each swing reveals new obstacles: thorn vines grabbing your pack, fallen logs forcing detours, ravines requiring careful crossing consideration. The work is exhausting in humid air, and you stop more frequently than planned to rest and rehydrate. But the challenging terrain reveals why M chose this route. As you gain elevation, occasional canopy gaps provide glimpses of island parts you've never seen. To the west, you catch sight of different coastline, not sandy beaches and rocky tide pools, but something more dramatic, possibly cliffs or deep water approaches that could be significant for boat launching. The map proves accurate in its warnings. The 3 parallel lines mark where the ridge becomes a knife edge of exposed rock with steep drops on both sides. You move carefully, sometimes crawling, using handholds that M might have improved, but time and weather have made treacherous. The exposure is intimidating. A fall here would be fatal, and you're completely alone with no rescue possibility. After 3 hours of steady climbing and careful navigation, you reach what the map indicates as the halfway point, a small plateau where M marked a rest stop. The clearing offers the first comprehensive view of the island's southern approaches, and what you see changes your understanding completely. Instead of gently sloping beaches and protected coves, the southern side presents dramatic sea cliffs, isolated coves, and what appears to be cave systems carved into rock face by centuries of wave action. More intriguingly, you see clear evidence of human modification too. Straight lines suggesting construction, cleared areas indicating deliberate land management, and most mysteriously, what looks like structural remains on a prominent headland overlooking the ocean. The descent from the plateau proves even more treacherous than the climb, with loose rock and steep grades forcing you to move in controlled slides and careful bracing. Your boots struggle for purchase on surfaces that crumble under weight, and more than once you grab for handholds as small stone avalanches cascade past your feet. M's map shows this section with multiple warning symbols, and you understand why. This is genuinely dangerous terrain that could easily injure or kill someone traveling alone. But the technical challenges also demand complete focus, providing unexpected relief from questions multiplying since spotting those structural remains on the headland. Who built them? When? Are they connected to M's residence or something older? The physical demands of safe movement through hazardous terrain leave no mental energy for speculation, creating a meditative state where only the next foothold matters. As you work down through increasingly dense vegetation, jungle sounds change in ways suggesting you're approaching the coast. Bird calls become different, species you don't recognize from familiar areas. The air carries new scents, salt mixed with unfamiliar vegetation and something else, possibly standing fresh water. According to the map, you're approaching what M marked as the cave, one of his most significant notations, marked with symbols suggesting both water source and shelter. The vegetation finally opens onto a narrow beach, completely different from your home shore. Instead of gentle sand and scattered rocks, this coastline consists of dramatic sea cliffs punctuated by small pocket beaches accessible only at low tide. The water here is deeper and more turbulent, with swells suggesting direct exposure to ocean weather systems rather than the protected bay conditions you're used to. But it's the cave system that captures immediate attention. The opening is larger than expected, easily big enough to walk through upright, carved into the cliff face at a height that would stay dry even during storm surges. Natural light penetrates deep enough to reveal this isn't just a simple cave, but the entrance to what appears to be an extensive underground system. M's map shows detailed notations around this area, with symbols indicating fresh water, shelter, and what might be storage areas. But it also shows something that makes your heart rate increase, symbols clearly representing human habitation, not temporary camping, but long-term residence. According to his careful cartography, this cave system was where someone lived for an extended period, possibly years. Standing at the cave entrance with afternoon light revealing smooth walls and carefully arranged stones, speaking of human improvement and organization, you realize this expedition has already exceeded expectations. You came looking for different resources and better construction materials. Instead, you've discovered what appears to be M's primary residence, the base from which he explored and mapped the entire island. Tonight, I write by the light of a small fire in what I can only describe as a cathedral carved from living rock. The cave entrance I discovered this afternoon has proven to be far more than simple shelter. It's the remnant of someone's carefully planned home, built with patience and skill, that speaks of years spent accepting this island as a permanent residence. The main chamber serves as both workshop and living space, with stone shelves carved at precise heights and tool pegs driven into natural cracks in the walls. But it's the personal touches that make this discovery feel like an intrusion into someone's private world. A wooden table, scarred from daily use. The remains of what was clearly a comfortable bed. Most soberly, medical supplies arranged near a freshwater spring, suggesting someone who spent their final days here fighting illness alone. The journal I found, far better preserved than I dared hope, fills in details that scattered artifacts only hint at. The same careful handwriting from the bottle map, but spanning what appears to be nearly a decade of island residence. The writer calls himself only M, and documents not just practical survival techniques, but the slow psychological adaptation required for long-term isolation. His early entries focus on immediate survival, shelter construction, food preservation, tool making. But as the years progress, the writing becomes more philosophical, exploring questions about purpose and meaning when survival itself becomes routine. The final entries, written in increasingly unsteady handwriting, suggest someone who had achieved remarkable self-sufficiency, but was struggling with declining health. Near M's resting place, I found his most precious possession, a letter addressed simply, To whoever finds this place. The message is brief, but encompasses a lifetime of island experience. I came here by accident, but stayed by choice, then found I had waited too long to remember how to choose differently. Everything you need is here. Use it better than I did. Tomorrow, I'll begin cataloging M's tools and techniques more systematically. His forge and metalworking setup represent capabilities I hadn't imagined possible with island resources. But tonight, as I sit in this space where someone lived and died alone, I find myself thinking about the choices that define a castaway's existence. The cave provides perfect shelter from the light rain that began after sunset, and the constant temperature makes it far more comfortable than my surface camps. But comfort feels inappropriate when surrounded by the life's work of someone who ultimately couldn't find sufficient reason to continue that life. I'll return to my well camp tomorrow, carrying with me both M's practical knowledge and his sobering insights into the psychological challenges that await anyone who remains on this island long enough to master its technical demands. This morning brought discoveries that change everything I thought I understood about survival on this island. While exploring the deeper chambers of M's cave complex, I found what can only be described as a sophisticated boat-building workshop, complete with the partially finished hull of a vessel that dwarfs anything I had imagined attempting. The construction is remarkable. Proper marine joinery, carefully selected and shaped timbers, and a design that speaks of someone who understood advanced naval architecture. The hull is perhaps 60% complete, built upside down on a framework that would allow one person to work on it systematically. Hand tools arranged nearby suggest work stopped abruptly rather than being completed and abandoned. Plans drawn in charcoal on the smooth cave wall show a vessel designed for serious ocean travel, complete with multiple sails, water storage, and provisions for extended voyages. But examining the construction more closely, I found evidence of multiple false starts. Earlier, abandoned attempts pushed against the cave walls, hulls that were started but proved inadequate for M's evolving standards. His technical journal documents not just the boat-building process, but his psychological journey through years of preparation and construction. The entries span nearly a decade, beginning with optimistic notes about escape timelines and evolving into philosophical reflections on whether departure was still worth pursuing. The final entry simply states, "The boat could work," but I'm not sure I remember why it matters anymore. Tonight, as I write this by firelight in my own camp, I find myself confronting questions that M clearly struggled with during his final years. He achieved remarkable technical mastery and created something that could genuinely carry him to civilization. But somewhere in that decade of focused work, he lost the motivation that made escape worthwhile. I've decided to attempt my own boat construction, but with important modifications to M's approach. His design is sophisticated, but requires resources and timeline that contributed to his psychological decline. I need something simpler, faster to complete, focused on reaching shipping lanes rather than self-sufficient ocean voyaging. Tomorrow I'll begin planning a more modest vessel, learning from M's techniques, but avoiding the perfectionist tendencies that trapped him in endless refinement cycles. The goal isn't to build the perfect boat, it's to build a functional one before isolation undermines the motivation to use it. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm planning my escape, using knowledge gained from someone who built the means of escape but never found the will to attempt it. M's boat represents both inspiration and cautionary tale, proof that technical capability alone isn't sufficient for liberation from this island. The return journey to my established camps takes on new significance as I carry M's most essential tools and plans back to familiar territory. I've decided against relocating to his cave workshop, learning from his experience that isolation from the surface world contributed to his psychological decline. Instead, I'll establish a rotation system that allows me to use his sophisticated equipment while maintaining connection to the world I'm trying to reach. 3 days per week in the cave for major construction work. 4 days per week at my surface, camps for routine maintenance, food gathering, and most importantly, daily signal watch for potential rescue opportunities. M's mistake, I believe, was allowing his technical projects to replace rather than supplement his connection to the outside world. Back at my well camp, I begin adapting M's boat plans to my own capabilities and timeline. His design assumes access to tools and materials that took him years to develop. I need a modified approach that can produce a seaworthy vessel more quickly, even if less sophisticated than his ultimate design. Speed matters more than perfection when dealing with the psychological challenges of extended isolation. Tonight, as I sketch my simplified design by firelight, I'm focusing on M's most successful techniques while eliminating the complex elements that contributed to his project's extended timeline. Instead of his multi-sailed vessel designed for long-distance cruising, I'll build a simpler craft optimized for reaching the shipping routes marked on his charts. The modified design prioritizes achievability over capability. Single sail instead of multiple rigging systems. Simplified hull construction that trades elegance for faster completion. Most critically, I'm planning to build near the eastern cove where launching will be possible, rather than in the comfortable but isolated cave workshop. I've also established new routines designed to maintain psychological health during the intensive work period ahead. Daily signal fire maintenance, regular entries in this journal addressing specific people from my former life rather than writing in isolation, and scheduled breaks from technical work to engage in activities that connect me to life beyond survival projects. M's technical legacy will be invaluable for my escape attempt, but his personal journey provides equally important lessons about what not to do. I won't allow technical mastery to become a substitute for human connection, and I won't allow project perfection to become more important than project completion. Tomorrow I'll begin the material preparation work that M's notes indicate is crucial for marine construction success. But unlike M, I'll approach this as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. The goal isn't to become the perfect island craftsman, it's to build something functional enough to carry me back to the world where my real life waits. You spend your first night in M's cave complex in a state of psychological overwhelm that makes sleep nearly impossible. The sophisticated workshop, the advanced boat project, the detailed records spanning nearly a decade, everything represents capabilities that dwarf your own 4 months of survival experience. But more unsettling than the technical achievements is the emotional trajectory documented in M's journals. The slow transformation from hopeful castaway to skilled resident to isolated hermit questioning the purpose of continued existence. The cave provides perfect shelter from light rain that begins after midnight, and the constant temperature makes it far more comfortable than your surface camps. But comfort feels inappropriate when surrounded by the life's work of someone who ultimately couldn't find sufficient reason to continue that life. You find yourself reading M's final entries by firelight, trying to understand how someone with such remarkable capabilities could reach such profound despair. Morning brings renewed determination to understand not just M's technical achievements, but the complete scope of the island's resources and possibilities. If you're going to avoid his psychological trajectory, you need to approach this situation with both his practical knowledge and a different mental framework, one that maintains hope for connection with the outside world rather than accepting permanent isolation as inevitable. You begin by conducting systematic inventory of M's tools and materials, cataloging everything useful for your own projects. The metalworking tools alone represent capabilities you hadn't imagined possible with island resources. Hand-forged chisels, precision measuring tools, specialized hardware for marine construction, equipment that could accelerate your boat-building timeline by months or years. But more valuable than tools are M's detailed construction notes and technical drawings. His boat design represents years of refinement, incorporating lessons learned from multiple failed attempts. The plans show solutions to problems you hadn't considered yet, creating watertight seals without modern materials, constructing rigging manageable by one person, designing storage systems for extended ocean voyages. The navigation materials are equally sophisticated, charts showing seasonal wind patterns, tidal calculations that could help time a departure for optimal conditions, and most crucially, detailed observations of ship sightings that suggest the best times and locations for intercepting maritime traffic. M wasn't just planning to escape the island, he was planning to maximize his chances of reaching help once he got to open water. As you study his work, a plan begins forming that combines his technical knowledge with your own psychological insights from reading his complete journey. You won't just continue his boat project, you'll accelerate it while maintaining regular contact with your surface camps and the outside world. The return journey to your home camps takes on new significance as you carry M's most essential tools and plans back to familiar territory where you've spent 4 months building survival systems. The technical knowledge you've gained needs integration with existing routines rather than replacing them entirely. M's mistake, you realize, was allowing technical projects to isolate him from the very world he was trying to reach. The trek across the island's central ridge provides time to process the psychological implications of your discovery. M spent nearly a decade developing remarkable capabilities, but that mastery came at the cost of hope and human connection. His final years were characterized by technical brilliance combined with emotional despair, a combination that proved more dangerous than simple lack of survival skills. Your approach will be different. Instead of relocating to the cave workshop, you'll establish a rotation system that allows access to M's sophisticated tools while maintaining connection to the surface world. 3 days per week in the cave for major construction work, 4 days per week at surface camps for routine maintenance, food gathering, and most importantly, daily signal watch for potential rescue opportunities. Back at your well camp, you begin adapting M's boat plans to your own capabilities and timeline. His design is sophisticated, but assumes access to tools and materials that took him years to develop. You need a modified approach that can produce a seaworthy vessel more quickly, even if less sophisticated than his ultimate design. Speed matters more than perfection when dealing with psychological challenges of extended isolation. The modified design focuses on M's most successful techniques while simplifying complex elements that contributed to his project's extended timeline. Instead of his multi-sailed vessel designed for long-distance cruising, you'll build a simpler craft optimized for reaching the shipping lanes he identified in his maritime traffic studies. Less ambitious, but more achievable within reasonable time frame. You also begin implementing M's navigation timing recommendations immediately. His records indicate ship sightings are most frequent during certain seasonal periods, and those periods are approaching within the next few months. If you can accelerate boat construction to coincide with peak maritime traffic, your chances of intercept and rescue improve dramatically. But perhaps most importantly, you establish new routines designed to maintain psychological health during the intensive work period ahead. Daily signal fire maintenance, regular communication with your journal, addressing specific people rather than writing in isolation, and scheduled breaks from technical work to engage in activities that connect you to life beyond survival projects. The evening is spent creating detailed plans that combine M's sophisticated boat design with your own timeline and psychological maintenance requirements. Tomorrow, you'll begin construction of a vessel that represents not just technical achievement, but hope for reunion with the world beyond this island. The return journey to your home camps takes on new significance as you carry M's most essential tools and plans back to familiar territory where you spent 4 months building survival systems. The technical knowledge you've gained needs integration with existing routines rather than replacing them entirely. M's mistake, you realize, was allowing technical projects to isolate him from the very world he was trying to reach. The trek across the island's central ridge provides time to process the psychological implications of your discovery. M spent nearly a decade developing remarkable capabilities, but that mastery came at the cost of hope and human connection. His final years were characterized by technical brilliance combined with emotional despair, a combination that proved more dangerous than simple lack of survival skills. Your approach will be different. Instead of relocating to the cave workshop, you'll establish a rotation system that allows access to M's sophisticated tools while maintaining connection to the surface world. 3 days per week in the cave for major construction work, 4 days per week at surface camps for routine maintenance, food gathering, and most importantly, daily signal watch for potential rescue opportunities. Back at your well camp, you begin adapting M's boat plans to your own capabilities and timeline. His design is sophisticated but assumes access to tools and materials that took him years to develop. You need a modified approach that can produce a seaworthy vessel more quickly, even if less sophisticated than his ultimate design. Speed matters more than perfection when dealing with psychological challenges of extended isolation. The modified design focuses on M's most successful techniques while simplifying complex elements that contributed to his project's extended timeline. Instead of his multi-sailed vessel designed for long-distance cruising, you'll build a simpler craft optimized for reaching the shipping lanes he identified in his maritime traffic studies. Less ambitious, but more achievable within reasonable time frame. You also begin implementing M's navigation timing recommendations immediately. His records indicate ship sightings are most frequent during certain seasonal periods, and those periods are approaching within the next few months. If you can accelerate boat construction to coincide with peak maritime traffic, your chances of intercept and rescue improve dramatically. But perhaps most importantly, you establish new routines designed to maintain psychological health during the intensive work period ahead. Daily signal fire maintenance, regular communication with your journal, addressing specific people rather than writing in isolation, and scheduled breaks from technical work to engage in activities that connect you to life beyond survival projects. The evening is spent creating detailed plans that combine M's sophisticated boat design with your own timeline and psychological maintenance requirements. Tomorrow, you'll begin construction of a vessel that represents not just technical achievement, but hope for reunion with the world beyond this island. Three weeks into your rotation between the cave workshop and surface camps, the island reminds you that survival always takes precedence over ambitious projects. A series of violent storms sweeps through the area, bringing winds that tear through your beach camp's windbreaks, and rain that turns jungle paths into treacherous mud channels, making travel between camps dangerous and exhausting. The storms force you to abandon boat construction entirely for nearly a week, focusing instead on basic shelter maintenance and food preservation as your carefully established routines are disrupted by weather that makes even simple tasks like fire starting and water collection into major challenges. The cave workshop provides excellent shelter, but being trapped there for days reminds you uncomfortably of M's increasing isolation from the surface world. When the weather finally breaks, you emerge to find significant damage to your surface infrastructure. Your beach signal station has been partially destroyed, with important supplies scattered or ruined by wind and water. The well camp's food storage has been compromised by roof leaks, forcing you to discard weeks of carefully preserved provisions that spoiled during the storms. The cleanup and repair work consumes another full week, but it also provides important lessons about island survival realities that M's technical journals didn't emphasize. No matter how sophisticated your tools or ambitious your projects, the island's natural systems can destroy months of work in hours. Resilience matters more than perfection, and maintaining multiple backup systems proves more valuable than optimizing any single system. The storm damage also reveals resources you hadn't noticed before. New debris has washed ashore, including several large timbers that could be valuable for construction projects. But more significantly, the heavy rains have exposed previously hidden landscape features, a small cave entrance near your well camp that you hadn't noticed before, and what appears to be foundation stones of some structure partially buried near the eastern cove. Instead of immediately returning to boat construction, you decide to investigate these new discoveries. The small cave near your well camp proves to be a natural storage area that could provide better protection for supplies than your current systems. It's not large enough for workshop space, but it offers ideal conditions for preserving food and materials against weather events like the recent storms. The foundation stones near the eastern cove tell a more intriguing story. Careful excavation reveals what appears to be remains of a substantial structure, not just a shelter, but something that might have been a permanent building with stone foundations and carefully planned layout. The stonework is old, much older than M's constructions, suggesting the island has hosted human inhabitants for much longer than you realized. The archaeological excavation near the eastern cove becomes an unexpected obsession that pulls you away from boat construction for weeks. What began as simple curiosity about storm-exposed foundation stones evolves into systematic exploration of what appears to be a complex of structures spanning a much larger area than initially apparent. Working carefully with improvised archaeological tools, you uncover evidence of multiple building phases spanning what must be decades or centuries. The oldest stonework uses techniques and materials suggesting much earlier inhabitants than M. Foundation patterns indicate structures designed for different purposes, what might have been residences, workshops, and storage areas arranged in a planned community layout. The most intriguing discovery is a stone-lined pit that appears to have been a communal fire area, surrounded by carved stones bearing symbols and markings you can't decipher. The stonework is sophisticated, indicating people with advanced masonry skills and time to invest in permanent improvements. This wasn't just survival camping, it was settlement building by people who expected to stay long enough to justify major construction projects. Personal artifacts scattered throughout the excavation area tell fragments of stories spanning multiple time periods. Stone tools that appear very old alongside metal implements that could be more recent. Pottery fragments showing different styles and techniques, suggesting either long occupation by the same group or multiple groups using the site over extended periods. Most mysteriously, carved decorative items suggesting artistic traditions and leisure time rather than just survival focus. The excavation work proves physically demanding, but mentally engaging in ways that balance the technical precision required for boat construction. Instead of working toward a single predetermined goal, archaeological exploration offers constant surprises and discoveries that keep your mind engaged with immediate curiosities rather than long-term anxieties about escape. But the archaeological work also raises uncomfortable questions about the ultimate fate of these previous inhabitants. The site shows clear evidence of abandonment rather than gradual transition. Tools and personal items are scattered as if people left quickly, and there's no evidence of burial sites or systematic dismantling that would suggest planned departure. The absence of human remains could mean previous inhabitants successfully escaped the island, but it could also mean their remains have been claimed by time and weather. The island's natural processes would eliminate most evidence of human death within a few decades, leaving only stone foundations and metal tools that can withstand long-term exposure to tropical conditions. As your excavation work expands to cover the entire visible site, you begin finding evidence that some structures were occupied relatively recently. Metal tools showing minimal rust, pottery fragments that haven't weathered smooth, and most significantly, cut marks on nearby trees that appear much fresher than the oldest archaeological evidence. Your fascination with the archaeological site leads to a discovery that changes your understanding of the island's tragic history. While clearing vegetation from what appears to be the settlement's outer perimeter, you uncover a stone platform that provides commanding views of the surrounding ocean approaches. This isn't just a lookout point, it's a carefully constructed observation station where someone spent considerable time watching for rescue ships. The platform includes carved channels designed to hold signal fires, with windscreens and fuel storage areas that would allow sustained signaling operations. Flat stones arranged as seating suggest this location was used for regular, hopeful watch duties. Most soberly, you find scratched marks in the stone that appear to be a counting system, someone marking days or weeks of fruitless observation. Examining the stonework more closely, you realize this represents months of patient labor by someone who understood they might be here for a very long time. The engineering is sophisticated, but achievable by a single person with basic tools and unlimited time. Someone sat here season after season, maintaining signal fires and scanning the horizon for salvation that never came. Near the platform, partially hidden by decades of vegetation growth, you discover a simple grave marker. The stone is roughly carved but deliberately shaped, bearing a date that makes your heart sink, 1847, 1852. Someone lived on this island for 5 years before death claimed them. Below the dates, scratched in unsteady letters, J. Morrison, bosun, ship Margaret. The grave is positioned to overlook the ocean, as if even in death, the occupant wanted to keep watch for rescue vessels. Small stones arranged around the marker suggest someone else buried Morrison and tried to create a dignified resting place, but there's no second grave visible, which raises the question of what happened to whoever performed the burial. The discovery forces you to confront the sobering reality that your situation isn't unique. Others have washed up on this island, established sophisticated survival systems, and ultimately failed to escape. Morrison survived 5 years, longer than you've been here, longer than M managed in his cave. But survival duration doesn't guarantee rescue. The platform investigation also reveals practical benefits that Morrison's long residence created. The elevated position and stone infrastructure make it an ideal location for signal fires that could be visible at much greater distances than your current beach-level signals. As afternoon light reveals the full scope of Morrison's settlement, you realize that previous inhabitants pursued many of the same strategies you've been developing. Signal fires for rescue, permanent infrastructure for long-term survival, systematic food preservation, tool-making. The techniques work. They enable long-term island residence, but they don't guarantee escape. The search for Morrison's burial companion leads you deeper into the settlement area, where you make discoveries that piece together the final chapter of at least 2 lives spent hoping for rescue that never came. Following stone-lined paths that extend from Morrison's grave, you find evidence of a second residence area, smaller and more crudely constructed, suggesting someone with less experience or fewer tools. Personal artifacts scattered around this secondary camp tell fragments of a story that spans the gap between Morrison's death and M's much later arrival. A ship's compass, corroded but still recognizable. Metal buttons that might have come from a naval uniform. Most significantly, a piece of slate with writing scratched into its surface, names and dates that suggest Morrison wasn't alone when he died. The slate bears the inscription, Morrison D. 1852, Fever, buried with honors by T. Chen, ship's cook, Margaret. Below that, in different handwriting that grows increasingly shaky, T. Chen, alone now, God help me, 1853. The slate serves as both Morrison's proper headstone and Chen's own desperate record of isolation following his companion's death. Following the evidence of Chen's residence, you find what appears to be his final camp, a crude shelter built into a natural depression, positioned to provide protection from weather, but also to overlook Morrison's grave. The arrangement suggests someone who spent his final period maintaining a vigil over his buried companion, unable or unwilling to move on to more practical locations. Chen's remains lie in the shelter, identifiable only by metal personal effects and the deteriorated remnants of clothing. Unlike Morrison's dignified burial, Chen appears to have died alone and been claimed by time and weather. His final position suggests he died looking toward the ocean, still hoping for rescue even in his last moments. Personal items found with Chen's remains provide insights into their shared experience. A hand-carved chess set, partially completed, suggests they found ways to maintain morale during their years together. Navigation instruments modified for island use indicate they attempted to calculate their position and plan escape routes. Most poignantly, a collection of carved tallies that suggest they maintained a calendar for nearly 6 years before Morrison's death. The discovery of Chen's improvised workshop reveals attempts at boat construction that parallel your own recent efforts. Partially shaped timbers, metal hardware salvaged and modified for marine use, and plans scratched into flat stones show systematic preparation for an escape attempt. But the project appears to have been abandoned before completion, possibly due to Morrison's illness or Chen's despair following his companion's death. As you examine the evidence of their long partnership and Chen's subsequent solitude, you realize that even companionship and shared hope couldn't guarantee escape from this island. Morrison and Chen achieved remarkable survival success for nearly 6 years, but ultimately succumbed to illness and despair. Chen's abandoned boat project becomes both inspiration and cautionary tale as you study his construction techniques and try to understand why his escape attempt failed. The partially completed hull shows sophisticated understanding of marine engineering principles, with joinery techniques that suggest years of patient skill development. But critical flaws in the design reveal why the project was ultimately doomed. The boat's dimensions are ambitious, large enough to carry substantial supplies for an extended ocean voyage, but far too large for a single person to complete and launch without mechanical assistance. Chen appears to have designed the vessel based on ships he remembered rather than considering the practical limitations of solo construction. The hull alone would have required moving and shaping timbers that exceed one person's lifting capacity. More soberly, the construction site itself reveals the project's fatal flaw. Chen built his boat in a location that provided good workshop conditions, but was separated from the ocean by terrain that would make launching impossible. Even if he had completed construction, moving the finished vessel to water would have required resources and manpower he didn't possess. The workshop contains detailed plans scratched into flat stones, showing Chen's systematic approach to solving technical problems. Hull design calculations, sail plans, navigation plotting techniques, everything indicates someone who understood the theoretical requirements for ocean travel. But the plans also reveal increasing desperation as practical problems mounted and solutions became more elaborate and unrealistic. Personal notes carved into the workshop walls tell the psychological story behind the technical failure. Early inscriptions are optimistic and focused on specific construction milestones. Later entries become philosophical, questioning whether escape is worth pursuing if it means abandoning Morrison's grave. The final entries suggest someone who had lost faith in the project but continued working because stopping would mean accepting permanent isolation. Chen's tool collection represents years of refinement and adaptation, with implements that clearly evolved through trial and error to solve specific construction problems. But the tools also show signs of increasing makeshift repairs and substitutions that suggest he was unable to maintain or replace equipment as his project demanded more sophisticated metalwork. Most instructively, Chen's material stockpile reveals the resource limitations that ultimately doomed his escape attempt. While he had accumulated substantial quantities of salvaged timber and metal, much of it was unsuitable for marine construction due to corrosion, warping, or structural damage. As you examine Chen's workshop in the fading afternoon light, you realize that technical knowledge and patient effort aren't sufficient to guarantee escape from this island. Even someone with years of experience and advanced skills can be defeated by practical limitations and the psychological toll of working alone. The lessons learned from Chen's failed boat project fundamentally change your approach to your own escape planning. Instead of rushing into construction based on M's sophisticated but overly ambitious designs, you spend weeks developing a more realistic project scope that accounts for the practical limitations that defeated your predecessors. Your modified boat design prioritizes achievability over capability. Rather than attempting to build a vessel capable of extended ocean voyages, you focus on creating something that could reach the shipping lanes M identified in his maritime observations. Smaller, simpler, and most critically, designed for construction and launching by a single person working with available tools and materials. Instead of building in the comfortable workshop environment of M's cave, you choose a location near the eastern cove that provides direct access to deep water for launching. The site offers less weather protection and requires hauling tools and materials across difficult terrain, but it eliminates the impossible task of moving a completed vessel over land. Material preparation takes on new significance as you apply lessons learned from examining Chen's corroded and unsuitable stockpile. Every piece of timber must be carefully evaluated for structural integrity, properly seasoned to prevent warping, and tested under stress before incorporation into the hull. The process is slow and results in rejecting much of what initially appeared to be usable material. But the careful preparation work also reveals the island's resource limitations that you hadn't fully appreciated before. Suitable timber for marine construction is scarce, and much of what you find has hidden flaws that become apparent only after considerable preparation work. The realization forces you to scale down your project even further to match available materials. Tool requirements for the modified project exceed what you can create with available equipment. Chen's workshop provides some advanced implements, but many are damaged beyond repair or unsuitable for the precision work your design requires. You find yourself spending as much time on tool repair and creation as on actual boat construction. The psychological challenges of the project prove more difficult than the technical ones. Working alone on a complex construction project while managing the mental health effects of isolation creates a feedback loop where setbacks undermine motivation, which leads to poor decision-making, which creates more setbacks. After 6 weeks of preparation and initial construction work, you achieve something Chen never managed, a hull section that's structurally sound and properly joined. But the success also reveals the scope of work remaining and the time it will require to complete even your scaled-down design. Standing beside your partially completed hull as evening light fades over the eastern cove, you understand why Chen eventually abandoned his escape attempt. The boat project provides hope and purpose, but it also demands resources that may exceed what the island can provide. The decision to abandon Chen's overly ambitious boat design leads you to a fundamental reassessment of what escape actually requires. Instead of building a vessel capable of indefinite ocean survival, you focus on creating something that could reach the shipping lanes M documented in his careful observations of maritime traffic patterns. The shift from perfection to functionality represents a crucial psychological breakthrough that your predecessors never achieved. Your new design prioritizes speed of construction over sophisticated capability. A simple outrigger configuration that provides stability without requiring the complex joinery that defeated Chen's project. Single-sail rigging manageable by one person rather than the multi-sail systems M planned but never completed. Most critically, dimensions that match available materials rather than demanding resources the island cannot provide. The construction site selection becomes your first major improvement over previous attempts. Chen built in a location that provided workshop comfort but made launching impossible. M designed for his cave workshop but never addressed the fundamental problem of moving a completed vessel to water. Your Eastern Cove location offers direct access to deep water, even if it means working in less comfortable conditions. Material preparation consumes the first month of your revised project, but the careful evaluation saves you from Chen's mistake of building with unsuitable timber. Every piece must pass stress tests that simulate ocean conditions. You reject nearly half of what initially appeared usable, but what remains provides confidence that your smaller vessel will hold together under real sailing conditions. Tool requirements prove more manageable with the simplified design. Instead of needing the precision metalwork that M's plans demanded, you can complete most construction using tools available from the combined workshops of your predecessors. The work progresses slowly but steadily, with each completed section representing genuine progress rather than impossible perfection. The psychological benefits of realistic progress exceed anything you experienced during the archaeological exploration or theoretical planning phases. Working on a project that advances measurably each day provides hope grounded in tangible achievement rather than wishful thinking. For the first time since discovering this island's tragic history, you feel genuine optimism about your prospects for escape. After 6 weeks of careful construction, you achieve something neither Chen nor M managed: a hull section that's both structurally sound and realistically completable. The success doesn't guarantee ultimate success, but it proves that learning from previous failures can produce better outcomes than starting from scratch. The rhythm of boat construction establishes a new pattern in your island life that balances ambitious long-term goals with the daily maintenance required for continued survival. 3 days per week at the Eastern Cove working on the hull, 2 days per week gathering and preparing materials, and 2 days per week maintaining your camps and food preservation systems. The schedule prevents the obsessive focus that contributed to your predecessor's psychological decline. Each work session at the construction site reveals new technical challenges that require creative solutions using available resources. Waterproofing the hull joints without modern sealants leads you to experiment with combinations of tree sap, heated beeswax, and fiber materials that create surprisingly effective barriers against water penetration. The process requires multiple attempts and careful observation of which materials provide lasting protection under stress. Your growing understanding of marine engineering principles comes through direct experimentation rather than theoretical study. You learn that hull flexibility matters more than rigidity in small boats, allowing the vessel to flex with wave action rather than fighting it. The discovery leads you to modify Chen's rigid construction techniques, creating joints that provide structural strength while allowing controlled movement. The outrigger construction proves more complex than anticipated, requiring precise balance calculations to ensure stability without creating excessive drag. You build and test multiple prototypes using small-scale models before committing materials to full-size construction. The testing reveals design flaws that would have been disastrous if discovered only after completing the full vessel. Weather delays force you to develop covered work areas that protect both materials and work in progress from tropical storms. The delays are frustrating, but also provide opportunities to refine techniques and plan subsequent construction phases. You begin to understand why your predecessors required years to develop their capabilities. Island construction demands patience and adaptation that can't be rushed. Tool maintenance becomes a critical skill. as the demanding construction work exceeds what your implements were designed to handle. You learn to sharpen, repair, and modify tools to meet specific project requirements. The metalworking skills developed from M's forge techniques prove invaluable for creating specialized hardware that Chen's project lacked. Progress measurements take on psychological importance beyond their practical value. You begin marking construction milestones and celebrating small victories that maintain motivation during periods when overall progress seems inadequate. The technique helps counter the discouragement that appears to have defeated Chen's morale during his final construction period. By the end of 2 months, your hull reaches the stage where launching becomes a realistic consideration rather than distant aspiration. The achievement represents not just technical progress, but psychological proof that escape remains possible despite the tragic history surrounding previous attempts. The first serious test of your boat construction comes during a week of severe weather that transforms the eastern cove into a chaos of wind and surge that would destroy any vessel not properly secured. Your partially completed hull, lashed down according to techniques learned from studying Chen's failed project, survives the battering with only minor damage that can be repaired. The test provides crucial confidence in your construction methods. Storm damage to your camps reinforces the importance of maintaining multiple resource bases rather than concentrating everything at the construction site. Your well camp suffers roof damage that ruins stored food supplies, while the beach camp loses signaling equipment to wind and surge. The losses set back your overall timeline, but also reveal weaknesses in your systems that needed addressing before attempting ocean travel. Recovery from storm damage takes precedence over boat construction for nearly 2 weeks, but the repair work also provides unexpected benefits. New debris washed ashore includes metal fittings that prove perfect for rigging hardware you couldn't manufacture with available tools. More importantly, the storm reveals a previously hidden cave near the construction site that could provide secure storage for completed boat components. The newly discovered cave extends deep enough into the cliff face to remain completely dry even during storm surge conditions. Unlike M's elaborate workshop cave, this space is simple but perfectly suited for protecting finished work from weather damage. You begin using it to store completed hull sections and rigging components, eliminating the risk of losing months of work to a single storm. Food preservation becomes more critical as construction work limits time available for foraging and fishing. You implement Chen's smoking techniques more systematically, creating larger batches of preserved protein that can sustain you through periods of intensive construction work. The improved food security allows longer work sessions without constant interruption for subsistence activities. Navigation planning takes on new urgency as boat completion approaches realistic timeframes. Using M's detailed observations of shipping traffic patterns, you identify seasonal windows when maritime activity peaks in the surrounding waters. The timing suggests you should complete construction within the next 2 months to coincide with optimal rescue opportunities. Weather pattern studies from M's journals reveal that the approaching season offers the most favorable wind conditions for small boat sailing. The information influences your rigging design, allowing you to optimize sail configuration for the prevailing conditions you'll most likely encounter during an escape attempt. As your 3rd month of construction concludes, you face the psychological challenge that defeated your predecessors, maintaining motivation and hope as the project nears completion. But success remains uncertain. The boat represents your best chance for escape, but also your most vulnerable investment of time and resources. The realization strikes you during a morning of frustrated work on sail rigging that refuses to hold proper tension. You've fallen into the same trap that consumed your predecessors. The boat project has become an obsession that isolates you from the island's natural rhythms and the basic survival skills that keep you alive. Chen's workshop tells the story of someone who forgot that staying alive matters more than any escape project. You make the difficult decision to step back from construction and return to the fundamental practices that sustained you through your first months here. The partially completed hull will wait. It's not going anywhere, and neither are you if you lose the skills that enabled survival this long. The island demands daily attention to food, water, shelter, and health that no long-term project can replace. Your first priority becomes rebuilding the food preservation systems damaged by recent storms. The smoking racks need complete reconstruction using improved techniques learned from studying Chen's methods. You spend 3 days selecting and preparing the right combination of woods for different types of preservation: hardwoods for long-term smoking, softer woods for quick curing, aromatic woods for flavor enhancement. The work reconnects you with the island's seasonal rhythms that boat construction had obscured. Certain fish run in predictable cycles, fruits ripen according to weather patterns, and tidal conditions affect shellfish availability in ways you'd begun ignoring while focused on construction schedules. Returning to daily food gathering reveals how much your awareness of natural cycles had diminished. Water management requires renewed attention as well. Your well camp's cistern system needs cleaning and repair after storm damage, and the filtration methods you developed months ago have become sloppy and potentially dangerous. You spend a full day properly purifying and testing water sources, remembering that illness could end your survival regardless of how sophisticated your escape plans might be. The psychological benefits of returning to basic survival work surprise you with their intensity. Instead of the constant pressure of construction deadlines and technical problems, daily survival tasks provide immediate, tangible results. A successful fishing expedition, properly preserved food, clean drinking water. These achievements offer satisfaction that boat building had somehow complicated rather than enhanced. Evening journaling resumes after weeks of neglect during construction obsession. Writing by firelight about daily observations, weather patterns, and personal reflections helps restore the mental clarity that had become clouded by technical focus. The practice also reveals how much your thinking had narrowed to engineering problems while losing sight of the broader experience of island life. Your journal entries begin documenting survival knowledge that could be valuable regardless of whether escape ever succeeds: food preservation techniques, weather prediction methods, tool-making skills, and most importantly, psychological strategies for maintaining hope and purpose during extended isolation. The return to systematic food gathering reveals how much the island's resources have changed during your months of distracted boat building. New plant species have appeared with seasonal shifts. Some fishing spots have become less productive, while others have improved, and your understanding of optimal harvesting times has become outdated through neglect of daily observation. You establish new routines that prioritize survival knowledge over construction projects. Morning expeditions to different parts of the island for food gathering, afternoon work on camp maintenance and tool repair, evening time for food preservation and journal documentation. The schedule ensures that basic survival skills remain sharp while leaving options open for future projects. Fishing techniques require complete relearning after months of sporadic attention. The tide pool harvesting methods you developed early in your residence have become rusty, and your understanding of which areas produce the best catches has lapsed. You spend several days reacquainting yourself with the eastern shore's marine resources, discovering new shellfish beds and updated fish migration patterns. The work also reveals seasonal changes in food availability that your construction focus had caused you to miss. Some plants that were abundant months ago have completed their growing cycles, while others have emerged that you hadn't noticed before. The discovery reinforces how much survival depends on constant attention to environmental changes rather than focusing on single, long-term projects. Plant identification becomes a renewed priority as you encounter species that weren't present during your early exploration. Some appear to be seasonal varieties, others might be new growth following recent storms, and a few could be plants you simply missed during earlier surveys. Each new discovery requires careful testing to determine edibility and potential uses for tools or construction materials. Your smoking and preservation techniques improve dramatically when you can focus on them without construction deadline pressure. You experiment with different wood combinations, varying temperature and humidity conditions, and testing how long different preservation methods actually keep food safe. The knowledge proves more immediately valuable than any boat building skill. Tool maintenance takes on new importance as you realize how much your construction focus had led to neglecting basic implement care. Knives need proper sharpening. Rope requires inspection for wear and replacement of damaged sections, and fire-starting equipment needs attention that could prevent dangerous failures during emergencies. The psychological shift from long-term project focus to daily survival awareness brings unexpected relief. Instead of constantly measuring progress against ambitious goals, you find satisfaction in successfully completing routine tasks that directly support continued existence. The change helps restore the mental balance that had become distorted by construction obsession. Weather observation skills return as you spend more time outdoors engaged in survival activities. You begin noticing subtle signs of approaching weather changes that had become invisible during periods spent concentrated on technical work in sheltered locations. A week of intensive bushcraft practice reveals how much essential knowledge you'd lost while focused on boat construction. Basic skills like fire starting in wet conditions, emergency shelter construction, and finding water sources during dry periods had become theoretical rather than practical abilities. The realization drives home how dangerous it would be to attempt ocean travel without maintaining fundamental survival capabilities. You establish a systematic review of every survival skill you've learned, testing each one under challenging conditions to ensure reliability when needed. Fire, starting with wet materials, constructing waterproof shelters using only natural materials, and purifying questionable water sources using improvised methods. Each test reveals areas where your abilities had degraded during months of construction distraction. Food preservation experiments expand beyond smoking to include drying, fermentation, and storage techniques that could be crucial during extended periods of bad weather or illness. You learn to create fruit leathers that keep for weeks, ferment fish into protein-rich pastes, and dry vegetables into concentrated nutrition sources that require minimal storage space. The island's medicinal plants become a new area of study as you realize how vulnerable you are to illness or injury while living alone. You begin systematically identifying plants with healing properties, testing preparation methods for treating cuts, digestive problems, and respiratory issues. The knowledge could mean the difference between recovery and death if serious health problems develop. Your understanding of the island's animal populations improves through renewed attention to tracks, feeding signs, and behavioral patterns. While you haven't encountered any dangerous animals, understanding what lives here and how they behave could be crucial for both safety and potential food sources during emergencies. Navigation skills receive renewed attention as you practice moving between different parts of the island without relying on established trails. Using natural landmarks, sun position, and terrain features to find your way becomes a daily exercise that could prove vital if you ever become lost or need to travel during poor visibility conditions. Water location and purification methods expand beyond your established sources as you learn to find and clean water from streams, rain collection, and even extraction from plants during dry periods. The techniques require practice to become reliable, but they provide backup capabilities that could save your life during extended droughts. The psychological benefits of mastering practical survival skills exceed anything you experience during construction work. Each new capability represents genuine self-reliance that doesn't depend on complex projects or sophisticated tools. You're becoming someone who could survive almost anywhere with minimal equipment. Your evening journal entries begin documenting a comprehensive survival manual that records everything you've learned about living on this island. The information could be valuable for future castaways, but more immediately, it helps consolidate your knowledge and identify areas that still need development. As your 6th month on the island concludes, you feel more genuinely prepared for long-term survival than ever before. Not because of ambitious construction projects, but because you've mastered the fundamental skills that keep human beings alive in challenging environments. Your renewed focus on daily survival reveals patterns in the island's ecosystem that months of construction distraction had caused you to miss. Animal tracks appear more frequently along certain trails during specific weather conditions. Bird behavior changes in predictable ways before storms arrive. Most intriguingly, you begin noticing human-made modifications to the landscape that aren't associated with any of the camps you've discovered. The modifications are subtle but unmistakable. Once you know what to look for, stones moved into arrangements that couldn't be natural, trees with cut marks that show deliberate pruning rather than storm damage, and cleared areas that follow patterns too regular to be accidental. Someone spent considerable time managing this island's resources in ways that go beyond simple survival camping. Following these signs leads you to discover what appears to be a systematic trail network connecting different resource areas across the island. The trails are overgrown now, but the underlying engineering is sophisticated. Routes that minimize elevation changes, avoid unstable terrain, and provide access to water sources and food gathering areas. This represents years of careful planning and maintenance. Your investigation of the trail system reveals evidence of resource management that suggests multiple people working together over extended periods. Cleared areas positioned to maximize food plant cultivation, stream modifications that improve water flow and fish habitat, and what appears to be selective forestry that encouraged useful trees while removing competing species. The scale of environmental modification exceeds what any individual could accomplish alone. M., Chen, and Morrison were clearly skilled survivors, but the landscape management you're discovering represents organized effort by a group with long-term plans for island habitation. This wasn't just survival, it was colonization. Near the center of the trail network, you find evidence of a structure larger than any individual shelter you've previously discovered. Foundation stones arranged in a pattern that suggests a communal building, possibly a meeting hall or shared workspace. The construction shows planning for permanent settlement rather than temporary survival. Personal artifacts scattered around the large foundation tell fragments of stories spanning multiple generations. Tools that show wear patterns from years of use. Pottery fragments that demonstrate artistic traditions beyond simple utility, and carved decorative items suggesting leisure time and cultural development. This was a community, not just a collection of individual castaways. The discovery forces you to completely reassess your understanding of the island's history. Instead of a series of individual shipwreck survivors struggling alone, you're seeing evidence of organized settlement that might have lasted decades. People lived here by choice, building something that resembled civilization rather than just enduring until rescue became possible. But the evidence also raises disturbing questions about what happened to this community. The settlement shows clear signs of abandonment rather than gradual decline. Personal items are scattered as if people left quickly, and there's no evidence of burial sites that would suggest natural population decrease over time. Six months of island residence has transformed your daily routines into something that feels natural rather than forced adaptation to desperate circumstances. Morning water collection, afternoon food gathering, evening tool maintenance and journal writing. The schedule provides structure that supports both physical survival and psychological well-being without the obsessive focus that trapped your predecessors. Your understanding of the island's geography has become comprehensive enough that you move between different areas with confidence born from familiarity rather than careful navigation. You know which routes provide the easiest travel during different weather conditions, where to find specific resources during various seasons, and how to read terrain features that indicate water, shelter, or potential hazards. Food security has reached levels that allow genuine menu planning rather than simply eating whatever you can find each day. Preserved fish, smoked shellfish, dried fruits, and stored fresh water provide baseline nutrition that supports more ambitious foraging for variety and optimal nutrition. You're eating better than many people in civilization, managed with modern conveniences. The island's wildlife patterns have become predictable enough that you can anticipate seasonal changes in food availability and adjust preservation work accordingly. Bird migration patterns affect egg gathering opportunities. Fish populations shift with water temperature changes, and plant fruiting cycles follow weather patterns that you're learning to read accurately. Your tool collection now represents genuine craftsmanship rather than desperate improvisation. Hand-forged metal implements, precisely shaped stone tools, and cordage made from island fiber materials provide capabilities that match or exceed what the previous residents achieved. Most importantly, you understand how to maintain and replace tools when they wear out or break. Shelter construction skills have evolved beyond basic weather protection to creating specialized structures for different purposes. Food storage areas that remain dry and pest-free, workshop spaces that provide good lighting and ventilation, and sleeping quarters that maximize comfort while maintaining security against weather and potential animal intrusion. The psychological discipline required for long-term isolation has become manageable through routines that maintain mental stimulation without allowing obsessive focus on single projects. Regular exploration of different island areas, varied daily activities that require different skills, and journal writing that processes experiences and observations provide mental engagement that prevents the depression that ultimately defeated your predecessors. Your signal fire capabilities have reached professional standards, with permanent installations at strategic locations and rapid deployment systems for emergency use. You maintain constant readiness to signal any passing vessels while accepting that rescue might never come. The balance between hope and acceptance has become psychologically sustainable. Physical conditioning has improved dramatically through months of demanding daily activities. Swimming, climbing, carrying heavy loads, and sustained manual labor have built strength and endurance that exceed what you possessed before the shipwreck. You're physically adapted to island life in ways that would make returning to sedentary civilization an adjustment. Most importantly, you've achieved something none of your predecessors managed: genuine contentment with island life that doesn't require escape fantasies to maintain psychological health. The morning brings a discovery that stops you cold while checking your signal fire stations. Fresh footprints in the sand near your beach camp that definitely aren't yours. The prints are human, recent enough that they haven't been erased by tide or wind, and they follow a path that suggests someone spent considerable time observing your camp from concealed positions. Your first reaction is disbelief, followed by careful verification. The prints are unmistakably human, the right size and shape, showing wear patterns from shoes or boots rather than bare feet. They circle your camp in patterns that suggest systematic observation rather than casual discovery. Someone has been watching you, studying your routines and capabilities. The implications hit you like physical blows. You're not alone on this island. Someone else is here. Someone who has been observing you without making contact. The isolation you've adapted to over 6 months has been an illusion. Everything you've built, every routine you've established, has been under surveillance by an unknown person with unknown intentions. Following the track patterns reveals the scope of observation you've been subjected to. Footprints lead to concealed positions that provide clear sight lines to all your major camps and activity areas. Whoever has been watching knows your daily routines, your resource locations, and your capabilities. They've been conducting systematic surveillance for an unknown period. The tracks are too fresh to be from any of your known predecessors. These prints were made within the last day or two by someone who is currently on the island and actively avoiding contact. The realization that you've been living under observation without knowing it is more disturbing than any physical threat would be. Evidence of concealed observation posts becomes obvious once you know what to look for. Branches arranged to provide camouflaged viewing positions, cleared sight lines that appeared natural but show signs of deliberate maintenance, and what might be temporary shelters positioned to monitor your activities without being discovered. Your mind races through possibilities as you examine each piece of evidence. Another castaway who arrived recently and has been studying you before making contact? Someone who was already here when you arrived and has been hiding for 6 months? A person with reasons to avoid contact who might consider you a threat to their own survival. The surveillance appears professional in its thoroughness and patience. Whoever has been watching has taken time to understand your capabilities and routines before revealing their presence. This suggests either extensive survival training or long experience with maintaining concealment in challenging environments. As you stand amid the evidence of prolonged observation, one footprint catches your attention that changes everything. It's smaller than the others, made by someone with a lighter step, and the wear pattern suggests different footwear than the other tracks. You're not being watched by one person. There are at least 2 people on this island who have been studying you in secret. The discovery that multiple unknown people have been observing your every move for weeks or months transforms 6 months of perceived solitude into a carefully maintained illusion that has just been shattered. The systematic search for more evidence reveals the chilling scope of surveillance you've been subjected to without your knowledge. Additional footprints leading to concealed observation points positioned throughout your territory, all carefully hidden from your normal travel routes. Someone has been watching your every move with methodical patience, studying your routines and capabilities from multiple vantage points. Following the faint trail network used by your observers leads to camouflaged shelters so well concealed that you walk past the first one twice before spotting the unnatural arrangement of branches and leaves. The construction shows sophisticated understanding of concealment techniques, but tells you nothing about who built them or why they've remained hidden. Evidence of long-term observation becomes undeniable as you discover more signs of prolonged surveillance. Worn spots in the undergrowth where someone spent hours watching, cleared sightlines that appeared natural but show signs of deliberate maintenance, and what might be supply caches hidden so expertly that finding them feels like luck rather than systematic searching. The most unsettling discovery is proof that multiple people have been coordinating their surveillance efforts. Different footprint patterns at various observation posts suggest at least 2, possibly 3 individuals working together to maintain constant awareness of your activities. They've been sharing information, planning their concealment, and making deliberate decisions about when and how to observe you. Personal items found at abandoned observation sites provide no clear answers about your watchers' identities or intentions. A few scattered belongings that could have been left by anyone, tool marks that reveal nothing about their makers' backgrounds, and evidence of careful cleanup that suggests they don't want to be identified or tracked. The timeline of surveillance appears to extend back weeks or possibly months, meaning these people have watched you struggle with basic survival, celebrate small victories, and work through the psychological challenges of isolation. Every private moment, every vulnerable situation, every achievement and failure has been observed by unknown eyes for reasons you can't begin to understand. As you examine each piece of evidence, the questions multiply without approaching any answers. Are they fellow castaways afraid to make contact? Hostile survivors protecting their territory? People with reasons to study you before revealing themselves? The possibilities range from hopeful to terrifying, with no way to determine which might be accurate. The footprints that started this discovery are already disappearing under the evening tide, but the knowledge they revealed will haunt every moment of your island existence. You're no longer alone, but you have no idea whether that's cause for hope or fear. As darkness settles over the island, every sound takes on new meaning. The survival game you thought you were mastering has suddenly become infinitely more complex, with players whose existence you never suspected and rules you don't understand. Tomorrow begins a new chapter, where nothing can be taken for granted, and the island's deepest mystery remains completely unsolved. You've found him. Not M himself, but everything he was. His workshop, his journals, his unfinished boat that could have carried him home but never did. A decade of island mastery that ended not in escape, but in a carefully carved grave and a letter that simply said, "Use it better than I did." The cave workshop holds everything you need to finish what he started. Tools that took him years to forge. Plans that represent a lifetime of engineering refinement. A boat design that could actually work if you have the will to complete what depression and isolation stole from him. But you've also inherited his most dangerous legacy, the knowledge that technical mastery isn't enough. That you can learn every skill, solve every problem, build every tool you need for survival, and still lose the one thing that makes survival worth attempting. What happens when you realize the island's greatest threat isn't storms or starvation, but the slow, seductive whisper that maybe you don't need to leave after all? What happens when you discover that the line between choosing to stay and being unable to choose differently is thinner than the edge of M's abandoned chisel? Join us next time as you face the choice that broke the previous resident. Commit everything to an escape that might fail, or accept the island as home and risk losing the very motivation that makes escape possible.